Good evening, ladies and gentle folk. Welcome to this live. And if you're watching it afterwards, I hope that you enjoy it. I'm going to get straight in to the clues that your relationship is toxic. Major clue number one would be that you are finding yourself in a state of confusion. If you regularly need to be asking the question, what the hell is going on here? When he said this or she did that or they did this, what is it that I'm getting from them? What is it that's going on here that doesn't quite make sense to me? You can say that you should be very suspicious that you could potentially be looking at a toxic relationship. Now, some people will say that's a bit paranoid and a bit hypersensitive. That's not a very good thing. And I would say, okay, let us inverse the paradigm. If we inverse the paradigm, when you're in communication with an adult who is being honest with you and is telling you the truth and is being forthright and sincere, why would there be any confusion? There may be sadness. It's not that there's going to be nothing negative there or nothing that makes you feel icky there. There could be rage. There even could be hatred. There could be, you name it, on the full spectrum of emotional literacy. Who knows what could be there? But confusion? Why? Why would you be confused? You can only ever be confused if you are not, in fact, in communication with an adult who is being forthright, honest, and sincere with you. So, confusion, if you're feeling confusion, there's a very, very good chance that something is not quite right in the relationship dynamic. Oh, I made a banner and I didn't show it. There we go. Confusion. That's number one. Now we move to my second banner. I made it, so I'm going to show it. Investigation. When you hit that place where you're just trying to figure out what the hell is going on, you're watching YouTube videos, you're Googling it, you're asking your friends, and you're saying, as somebody just did in the comments before, asking for second, third, fourth opinions. Is this okay? Is this right? Is this normal? Again, that's an indication that there's something in the relationship that is toxic. And again, people will say, this is too much. It's too strong. You shouldn't be calling it toxic if there's a bit of confusion and there's a bit of investigation there. I will explain to you why I am so severe with that prognosis and with that boundary in the third clue. But for now, just be aware that if you're driven into a state of hypervigilance, if you're playing back conversations and going, what does this mean? What the hell is going on? What is this all about? You're confused. You're stuck in the role of investigator. You're desperately trying to remember details. You're filtering through, you're scrolling through WhatsApp messages and text messages and Instagram DMs to go, the bloody timelines don't add up here. What the hell's going on? If you're forced into the role of Sherlock Holmes, that again is a toxic relationship. The third, I'm keeping this brutally simple, this video. The third element is coercion. And this is why I say, if you have a state of confusion, not once, if it's like once and you misunderstand each other, don't be a crazy person who hears something on a YouTube video and is like, right, you're out of my life because I got slightly confused one time. It's the consistent pattern that we're looking for. A consistent pattern of confusion is not good. A relationship that your boyfriend, your girlfriend, your husband and wife is in that you're not sure about, it's not good. Everything should be clear and above board. What I know from my perspective, and I'm in this and out of this at the same time, because, you know, I'm not above this, but I get to see it because it's part of my profession. When I'm on the other side of the table, when I'm on the other side of the coaching relationship, when somebody tells me that they are confused and that they're investigating, well, I can deduce that there's a communication breakdown. And you would say, there's no communication breakdown. We communicate all the time. And my response would be, because I'm you know, mean and a bit of a dick, is I would say that's simply not true. That's BS. You can't be communicating clearly and find yourself in a state of confusion. You can't be communicating clearly and be driven to a state of hypervigilance and investigation, trying to figure out what's going wrong. It doesn't exist. You only can believe that that is clear communication if you have no baseline whatsoever for what clear communication is. When you do, and when you have had that in your life, and everybody who's experienced clear communication will attest to this, there is no doubt. When you're in a relationship with somebody where everything is upfront and everything is just as it should be, and you know exactly what is going on, the communication is ultra clear, even if it's bad. I reiterate, it could be angry, it could be hostile, it could even be aggressive, it could include threats, legal action. I'm going to come around and punch you in the arm or whatever. It's still clear. It doesn't create confusion. The only time confusion is so ongoing and the person experiencing it is driven into a state of hypervigilant investigation is when there is coercion. Coercion is being pushed to do something against your will. Now, our primary concern here will not be overt coercion. People are not generally asking me, I mean, in my streetfightsecrets.com days when I was a self-defense instructor, people would ask me, what would I do if somebody comes to my house and makes threats? Or somebody comes to my house and tries to, you know, control me or do something physically to me? That would be physical overt coercion. We're in the realm of covert coercion here, where somebody is pushing you to do what they want. And you know when you're being covertly coerced because you can feel it. For people who haven't had healthy relationships, it's tricky to know when you're being covertly coerced. But if you've had the blessing in your life of recovering enough to get to the point where you've had just one friendship, one professional relationship, one teacher-student relationship that's clear, you'll never go back. You'll never wonder ever again. You'll be like, okay, and I now have a point of comparison, and I have no doubt that this is not right forevermore. You'll always have something to compare it to. You'll be like, well, when I was friends with Richard, did I ever feel like I didn't really know what was going on? And you'll be like, no, I knew what was going on because the guy has a filter issue and he would tell me all the time, even stuff I didn't want to know. He would just keep telling me what he was thinking and feeling. So it's covert coercion that's the issue. Somebody asked me the other day just to talk about covert narcissism. And I'm like, I don't want to talk about narcissism very much, but I hear you, because I think the way I would reframe that is it's actually what you're looking at is emotionally toxic relationships that are in the covertly coercive spectrum. You don't really mean covert narcissist. It's like an internet diagnosis. It's taken on another meaning, but a covert narcissist is poorly named. It just means a vulnerable or fragile narcissist. But we can talk about strategies, and I'm happy to. And a strategy that bothers a lot of people, rightly so, is when you can't really tell if it's happening or not. It's emotionally abusive, emotionally toxic, and it's covertly coercive. If you are being coerced covertly into doing things that are against your core values, and I suggest you find out what your core values are. If you need help with that, just ask me. And you need help with your core values, and if you know what your core values are and you're being asked to act in a way that is not in accordance with them, the relationship is toxic. Simple. If you're being manipulated, the relationship is toxic. Simple. Now, this is a controversial point. Let me just check on the comments here. Got a lot of people tuning in tonight. Okay, everybody can hear me and everything's going well. Sometimes I get into a thing and then I'll look back 20 minutes later and people are like, Richard, we couldn't hear you. Your mic is cut out. And I just keep going because I can talk. So what can happen under these circumstances is that you can be pushed to be manipulated. And the controversial point I would like to make is, especially when we established in the chat, there's mainly women here, is manipulation is always toxic. Manipulation is always toxic. Whether it's you talking to your kids, you talking to your friends, you talking to your husband, don't manipulate. Speak openly. Tell people what you want and have the courage and vulnerability to open up to the possibility of hearing the word no. Be clear, precise, and upfront. I have had this argument, so many times with the women in my life. Usually not female friends wouldn't bother. They would just tell me. But which is very telling. My female friends, they don't manipulate me. There's no point. They'll just tell me what they want, and I'll say yes or no. Will you see me at the gym later? Yes. Okay, fine. Do you want to go food after? No. Okay, that's it. Done. But in a relationship, it becomes a default setting, I think, for people who haven't worked it through or haven't done the work. Manipulation is always toxic. Whether it's a man doing it to a woman doing it to a man, or a girlfriend doing it to a girlfriend, or a man doing it to his boyfriend, it does not matter. It's toxic. Don't covertly push people to do what you want them to do, even if you think it's good for them. I mean, just imagine the mind-numbing arrogance of pretending to know what's good for another human being anyway. I know what decision you should make. I'm going to do this. Similarly, resist the temptation to ever use guilt or shame to get people to act in a way that you want. This is a tricky one with parents because it's very normalized and it's seen as very like low level force thing to do, to kind of like guilt your kids a little bit. Just like, don't you want to do what mummy wants you to do? Don't you, you don't want to make daddy feel sad, do you? And so there's guilting and shaming that goes on there. Please never, ever do that. To put guilt and shame into another human being's body to get them to do what you want them to do I know it works, but it's only as good as threatening to hit them because you're offering them pain. Guilt and shame is very painful and very, very damaging because it corrupts the hard drive of the human that you're doing it to. So never, ever do that. When it's being done to you, deal with it severely. That's why I said, if you're confused and you're investigating, it's because you're being manipulated. And manipulation is covert coercion via a more socially acceptable name. Never accept manipulation. And when you feel yourself drifting, we've all done it. We're all human. We're all going to go there at some point in our lives. We're all going to feel the temptation to do it. Don't. Communicate clearly. And I'm gonna go woo. I warned you on this channel I was going to go woo. So you can't say we only want psychology. We don't want the woo. We don't want to move into the mountains of the woo. I think it generates bad karma. And I suspect that there's probably out there like a spectrum. Let's take a scientific view of karma, which is just cause and effect. There's multiple translations of the word karma. It's actually quite hard to translate from Sanskrit, and it depends on which tradition, whether it's Buddhism, Hinduism, which school of Buddhism. But let's do the most sciencey Western one, cause and effect. It's the worst. There's probably a spectrum of things that generate bad karma, but inside of a relationship, multiple infractions of the other person's boundaries through covert coercion will come back to damage you and to damage the relationship. So don't do it. And don't let people do it to you. Now, from what I've just told you, that I was advising somebody to do this the other day. Okay, it'll come to me who it was or what the context was. It doesn't really matter. But this was advice I gave somebody the other day. Crystal clear now. It just came to me. When you're dealing with this in a relationship, you can say to the other person, listen, I value you and I value what we have and I want it to move forward. I really do. But if we want to keep this relationship strong, we're regularly going to have to upkeep it. We're going to have awkward conversations. It's childish to think it's just going to work on its own steam. We're going to have to upkeep it here. There's things that's happening between me and you in our communication that we can't afford to do it. I'm not trying to make you wrong. I'm saying you and I together, we should have rules about how we speak to each other. And it cannot include this, this, and this. And on this particular subject, I would say it cannot include covert coercion. You can't be pushing my buttons and I can't push yours. And let me tell you why. Because there's you and there's me and there's this third entity called the relationship. And I believe that you and I both want to preserve this thing. You respect me ultimately, and I respect you ultimately. And I wish you well and you wish me well. There's nothing but good intent here. This relationship will be corroded by manipulation and covert coercion. It's bad karma, man. And when you stare at them and you're like really intense and be like, it's bad karma, man, they'll listen to you. If they won't, it's not great, guys. It's really not good. If you say to somebody in the right spirit, if you're being manipulative, if you're being passive aggressive, if you're being catty, if you take my words and use them with a different intent, God, Buddha, Shiva help you. Odin won't help you. Nobody's coming if you do that. I'm saying with the intent that I just delivered it to you. So nobody can have any confusion about this. With positive intent, with righteousness, as it says in Buddhism, right? What's the Noble Eightfold Path that leads us away from suffering? Right intent, right meditation, right thought, right word, and right deed. Be righteous, be noble. That's why it's called the Noble Eightfold Path. Come to them and say, listen, I care about you and I want this relationship to be preserved. We cannot speak to each other this way. You saw your dad do it to your mum, and I know that. And I've seen your mum and dad together and we all laugh and it's a joke. But listen, it's not good for the relationship. It hurts this third entity called the relationship, and you and I need to protect it. We need to protect it. That's why we're having this conversation. If you are faced with a temper tantrum, if you're faced with word salad, if you're faced with the logical fallacy that's called tu quoque, my Latin's not great. It's spelled tu, as in two, like in Spanish, tu, you, quoque, which means also. So there are three major logical fallacies that you'll see in any internet argument. There's only three that you need to be aware of. One is the straw man. The other one is the ad hominem. So straw man or straw woman, straw entity, ad hominem. So you attack the person, not the argument. And the third one is tu quoque. But what about you? But what about you? You also. So if you get any of that, it's not good, guys. The fact that you've come to this point and you've said, let's have a come to Jesus moment, sit with me. I want to talk to you. Let's have a moment of sanity here. Let's not just let this thing just spill on. Because again, to make a woo point here, when we relate to each other, it's not just us. Here's the really woo point that can lose me a lot of people. I think, well, everybody's familiar with intergenerational trauma, right? We're bringing the karma of generations with us. And the battlefield is love. It's so crucial now that we find a way back to each other, that we crawl our way back to intimacy and to love and to connection with other human beings. We must have the tools and the battle strategies to be able to do that. And this is one of them. So come to the person and say, look, this is what I want. We cannot afford to be manipulating each other and playing with each other's emotions. It's not going to work well for us. Any and all covert coercion must be stripped from the relationship. I'll have bad days. You'll have bad days. We're going to fall back into it, but let's not do it. When you argue in love, it gets crazy so quickly because it's not just you there. When I was in Encinitas the last time, I did a talk there and I didn't film it, which was a shame because I was in a good mood and I was flowing. I was really, really good. I'm not humble, except when it comes to mathematics. I suck at maths, but sometimes I'm really good at public speaking. And I went into this thing where somebody asked me about profits, man, profits. And I was like, hey, I just made it up on the spot. I was like, hey, a profit is always a no. Profits always bring boundaries. They always bring a discipline. A no is always a structure. No is always, don't just go with it. Don't just go with it. Stop. Think. What are we doing here? That's how we bring consciousness to it. Only dead fish go with the flow. What are they saying no to? So then I was like tripping. I'm in this like yoga studio and Encinitas is too small. There's too many people in there. I'm sweating and I'm stood up. My knee is hurting like hell. And I'm like tripping out. And I start to have like an acid flashback. And I remember seeing on one of my acid trips from a long time ago, people, humans, humanity, just coming down the wall. Father, son, mother, daughter, father, son, mother, daughter, father, son, mother, daughter, in this overlapping pattern that was just never ending. All races, creeds, ethnicities, all around the world, all traumatizing each other. Not meaning to, just like not meaning to do it. But the thing is, we don't live in the Garden of Eden anymore. We live in a realm where there can be pain. And when there is pain and there is trauma, you'll hand it on. It's not your fault, but you'll do it. I've done it. I've taken pain and I've handed it on. But I think we do it at a ratio of like 1 to 1,000. You hurt me once, I'll probably hurt 1,000 people. I hurt you once, you'll probably hurt 1,000 people because that one incident. Why? Because as the human animal that we are, we have an imagination and a memory. We're very clever. We can do things other animals can't do. We're self-aware. We have the IQ. We have an imagination and a memory. And my memory will play again and again of when I was hurt. Somebody was asking in the comments before, you know, about like the mindset of like, the world is made up of winners and losers. You're either the person being fucked or you're the fucker. And I've heard it for people in my own family. It's a dog eat dog world. In the game of love, you're either a winner or a loser. I used to work for like gangsters, like criminals in Liverpool. And they would talk like this. Their mentality is like rigid, traumatized, but they're all traumatized. They're all traumatized. Watch Britain's Scariest Debt Collector. It's a viral Vice video with Sean Smith. That was the first guy I ever worked for in Liverpool. He was my boss for years, Sean Smith. It's got millions of views. It's on the Vice channel on YouTube. It's called UK's Scariest Debt Collector or Britain's Scariest Debt Collector. And in that short documentary, Vice did a good job on that one. They get into the fact that him and his guys, they have borderline personality disorder. They've been diagnosed with psychopathy. They've got drug addiction. It's not good. It's trauma. It's pain. A prophet sees the generations, sees the chaos, sees mother, daughter, father, son, father, on and on and on, trauma, and says, stop, stop. We have to say stop. If we don't say stop, it's going to keep going. What we can see in the world today is that it is keeping going. You can't sleepwalk through a relationship. You can't sleepwalk through life. You can't bob along and just go, well, you know, if I do my yoga and draw a mandala, everything will be okay. That's not karma. There's no teaching out of the East that says that. That's Western corruption of Eastern philosophies that were as rigorous, as disciplined, and as hard line as anything you'd find amongst the Greeks. Anything. Hinduism, Buddhism is a strict discipline to help you cope with the suffering of life, an expectation that there will be trauma, there will be pain, and how to live with it, how to deal with it. Nobody said, oh, just bong a bell, light some incense, bow to the Buddha, and everything will be okay. No, it won't. It won't. Going with the flow is not going to be okay. So we have to be the prophets in our own lives because nobody else is coming. We've already had them. They tried. That didn't work. And they tried and they tried. And we've been given a lot. We were given a ton. Humanity was given loads by the prophets. If you go back and just check out, I don't know, just pick a major world religion at random. Let's do Zoroastrianism today. Yeah, there's a fucking ton of information there about how to not have a life that sucks. Are you doing it? No. Well, so it's not an information issue, is it? It's not that we don't know what to do. It's just that we're not doing it. So we have to do it. And the first thing we have to do as prophets in our own lives is say, stop, stop. Not today. It ends with me. It ends here. It ends now. That's Buddhism. That's Zen Buddhism. There's an expression from Zen, the Zen school of Buddhism, that says, this very body, this very moment, the Buddha, the Buddha. It's not out there. Enlightenment's not over there, up there, in the past. It's here, now, or never, or just forget about it. So what's the enlightened way to handle a relationship? You're going to have to say and tell the person who you love and you hold in loving consciousness without mauling them, without coercing them, without manipulating them, you are now behaving like a huge bellend and you need to stop. And that is Dharma. That's Buddhism. That's Hinduism. Stop. You're acting like a complete bellend. You're generating bad karma in your life, my life, and in the lives of everyone you touch. And this 1 in 1,000 rule, I know it sounds gruesome, but if you think about, this was the other day, I was walking around in a circle, I was pacing, I was out in nature. I was having a good time. I love a think. Oh, a nice, long, hard think. Love it. I was thinking about the Garden of Eden as a metaphor. Tabula rasa, clean state. Us, animals. Think in the Garden of Eden, Adam and Eve. Think of them on all fours. And then what happened, and he was like, you stand up now, idiots. Yeah, your back's going to hurt, but you stand up now. So we had nothing to worry about. Everything was fine. Everything was okay. What entered that changed it? Pain, trauma, the trauma of disconnection, the trauma of a lie, the trauma of a misdeed or the breaking of a boundary. But that's life. Everything is shaped by trauma. Don't hate trauma. Don't hate trauma, but be ready to handle it, especially when you see it in yourself, especially when it comes up in your own life. It's fine. It's great. It's meant to be there. It's not like a throwback to a world that's gone wrong. No. It's just perfect. There it is. There it is. Perfect. Now what? You hold it in consciousness and you seek to transmute that trauma into higher consciousness. You hold in consciousness the pain and the suffering, and then your work is to transmute it to higher consciousness. That is alchemy. That was the only alchemy that ever was. Turning lead into gold was a joke that like magicians told plebeians as a laugh. Because people are like, oh, can you show us a magic trick? They'll be like, yeah, we can show you how to turn lead into gold, you flipping dimwit. Can you make me fly? Bloody hell, you can't even put your shoes on without arguing with somebody. What's flying going to do for you? The real alchemy is transmuting pain and suffering into higher consciousness. Don't posture, don't fake it, don't be all posy and like, oh, so, like people get into a weird thing. A friend of mine said this about NLP practitioners. He was like, you'll meet an NLP practitioner and then you get them on the subject of psychology and they'll be like, oh yeah, actually, I'm trained in NLP. And then I was like, holy shit, you're right. And people are into yoga, they do the same thing. And people are into anything like spirituality or whatever, they do the same thing. Oh yeah, I do yoga. Yeah, so yeah. It's like you weren't talking like that a second ago. You're just being normal. We were chatting about your favorite Netflix show, and now you're being all, don't do that. Be sincere, be straightforward. When you see that in somebody, seek to transmute it, seek to turn it into something that's higher. Now, if you can't do it for them, please don't hold on to it. Please don't grasp onto the idea that if you can just save them, you can save the relationship and therefore save yourself. That is going to cause tremendous suffering for you. For you, at least. It's probably going to be annoying to everybody else, but to you, it's going to cause tremendous suffering. The perspective I'd like people to adopt that I think would be helpful is, if this relationship isn't right for me, then I'd really rather not be in it, because my ultimate goal is not to have a boyfriend. My ultimate goal is not to have a girlfriend. My ultimate goal is to grow. My ultimate goal is my own personal alchemy, to transmute from lead into gold. Haha, metaphorically speaking, to transmute lower consciousness into higher consciousness. If you're with me and you're part of that, wonderful. I really like you. You have nice colored eyes. I look at them and I get a good feeling. That's great. And you're funny, especially when you fart. Fine. But if it's not that, let it go. Priorities. Have your priorities in order. You don't hold on to a relationship just for the sake of being in a relationship. If you tell yourself that, you are doomed and you're trapped and you're imprisoned, you're stuck in the material world and you're imprisoning that person as well. Because then you'll fight and you'll try and manipulate them and you'll hold too tightly. And that's where the covert coercion can start. So you'll be going, well, this person's a narcissist and they're covertly coercing me. And I'll be like, can we have just a little chat philosophically where you're covertly coercing people? I would never. I'm an empath. Okay. And could we look just philosophically, if you had, where would it be? We're all doing it. Why? Because we're frightened. We're all frightened. We're terrified. Nobody knows what's happening. We don't know what we are. We don't know where we are. We don't know what our purpose is. Nobody can give us a definitive, concrete answer for us to hold on to. We don't know what our purpose is. What can we do with that simple fact? I say embrace it. I say embrace it. That's our fundamental human fetishist split in the Freudian, Zizekian sense. I know and I do not know at the same time. It's that we don't know what we're doing here. Don't run from it, hold it. So, wow, wow, wow. We have no idea what we're doing here. That's amazing. The slate's clean. We have no, maybe we're just here to play with that possibility. I don't know, but you can hold the I don't know rather than running from it. In holding the I don't know, that means you have the humility, the consciousness, and the respect for the other person to say, I do not know what is best for you, homie. I really don't. Right now, this is how I'm seeing you. Could be my stuff, could be your stuff, could be projection, could be all kinds of stuff. I'm just an entity that wears socks. That's it. I don't know. But this is what I'm experiencing. What do you think is going on here? And see if you can have that conversation. If you can't, then you could be looking at a toxic relationship. The other side of the toxic relationship would be, don't hold on to something that the other person doesn't want. Don't push people into doing things that they don't want to do. I've never said this on this channel before. There's a few things that I've wanted to say, but I'm scared. Like, I don't want to hurt people and I don't want to set people off. But I know there's a good number of people, because I've had the conversation with them, boys and girls, who got into a relationship that they felt was toxic. And then when we actually broke down the progression of the relationship, they pushed the other person into the relationship. They pushed the other person to marry them. They pushed the other person to stay with them. They'd given the other person a sob story about how they needed rescuing. They'd pushed their buttons. They'd inflicted coercive control. And then 2 years, 3 years, 5 years later, they're complaining that the person is behaving narcissistically with them. And I'm sat there going, listen, I do this for a living. That's not NPD. That's an angry, bitter, trapped human being. And their bitterness and their anger is just leaking out. And they're nasty. Oh, listen, they're nasty all day and manipulative and whatever. But that's not NPD. That's a trapped human being, man. You've gripped them up. You've put them in a position they didn't want to be in. And they went along with it. Maybe they have weak boundaries, or they have some codependency issues or something with the mother, the father, the generational stuff. And they're not happy because they're trapped. What would be the best thing to do? Well, do I stay with him or do I walk away? And you try and break it down to these two splitting the roads. And I'm like, no, that's catastrophic thinking. That's rigid thinking. That's trauma thinking. That's fear. Come with me and let's try and elevate beyond that. Let's try and push past it. I don't want to be like, ooh, let's just and be all woo transcendentally. I'm trying to give you something that's concrete here. This is concrete. You can sit with an emotionally painful, awkward, weird, I thought you were going to do this and you disappointed me and now I'm it's all weird. Like Eckhart Tolle said, like somebody in his audience were going, I've got a complicated life situation. He was like, ho, 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 ho. This weird little laugh. Ho, 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 ho. Is it not that all situations are weird and complicated in life? And it's like, it's all weird. It's all complex. It's all awkward. We're all awkward, weird, bleh, sort of creatures. Can we have that, accept that, and level up? Well, do I stay with him or do I leave him? Whoa, where are you coming from with that? What's your intent? Are you desperately trying to connect with another human being so that you don't have to deal with the stuff in your life? I can't help you. Nobody can help you. You're going to end up really disappointed because you've put everything on another person. You bet all your chips on an entity in socks. I do business training for people, and sometimes we review contracts and business relationships, and I take this to the romance realm, not so much in coaching. I do it with my friends because it's kind of gross, but really practical. I say, look at it like a business relationship. What are you going to get? What are they going to get? Do you have a contract? Is it an implicit contract? Is it an explicit contract? Does it make sense to you? How much are you investing? And then they'll tell me, and I'll be like, can I just think about this. Like, human fragility is my job. Human frailty is my job. Can I just tell you not to put all that you just told me on one human entity in socks? It's not smart. That's a bad business decision. That's a shitty contract because they can't hold that. We are putting too much onto each other. Why? Because we've discussed this in other videos. We're living in a love deficient culture. Everybody's got their head in their phones. Nobody looks at you. And it doesn't hurt you. Like, if you walk into a room and I don't look at you, it doesn't hurt you. It doesn't. You won't even register it. Not the first time, but the 500th time and the 5,000th time. You'll be going, I feel weirdly depressed today. Wonder why. 5,000 humans you walked past didn't even look at you. We're not built for that, man. We're not built for that. We're built for connection. We're built for love. We're built for each other. Human life is other humans. We're not wolves. Like, our lives aren't the trees. They're not the savannah. They're not the forests. They're each other. You can't deal with that. You can't deal with not being looked at. So everybody's in this state, myself included, of love deficiency. Everyone. This is not just like, oh, if you had a bad childhood and alcoholic parents. No. Everyone now. We're all love deficient. Love here, remember, is everything. Is your mates, like, I don't know, back in pre-World War II that you went down the pub with, and one of you played the piano and the other one would sing a song, and then you do your dance because you're good at that dance, right? We all want to see that dance. That's a nice dance you got going there. We all want to see that. Your community needs that. And I'm not a nostalgic for days gone by when people had gingivitis and feet that didn't work. I'm just saying, evolutionarily, in terms of our past, we need each other. So everybody's love deficient right now. So why are people getting into these relationships? Why are people looking up online? What's the 3 signs of a toxic relationship? Because you get with one person and you think, oh, thank God, the pain will be over. No. This is wrong thinking. And it's a brutal truth and it's uncomfortable. But I would rather give you an ugly truth than a pretty lie. It doesn't end there. It won't end there. It can't end there. That person cannot be the solution for everything. And so, accepting that and knowing that, my advice to you would be to look at the situation as it is and to shift your priority from the perfect partner, the perfect relationship, to alchemy. What happened to Richard Grannon's videos? He used to give advice on narcissistic abuse. Now he's telling us all to become alchemists. Okay, alchemy. In your life, in your relationships, in you, where you see shit, turn it into gold. Where you see pain, where you see trauma, your job is to transmute it into gold. By yourself, for yourself. Have your community, have your connections. Please connect with other people. Reduce this this thirst, this desperation around love. But there is work that you need to do, that I need to do, that we all need to do, that can only be done individually. That's like your, let's call it a hero's journey. That's your individual hero's journey. The transmutation of shit to gold. The transmutation of trauma to higher consciousness. And it's not vague. It's not like, oh, higher consciousness. This guy hasn't even, like, he doesn't have robes on. He didn't change his name to something weird. Just higher, not the highest. Just, maybe it would, in one situation, it might just be the more mature thing to do. The less pain-inducing thing to do would be a good guideline. This is real Buddhism. This is not bullshit Western Buddhism. This is real Buddhism. Diminish suffering. Diminish pain. See the suffering. Have compassion for the suffering. Seek to diminish it in yourself and in others. That is Buddhism. Everything else is garbage. That's the only message to put out. It's like, just suffer less. That's it. Everything else, everything's built up around it. And it's like, whoa. It's just like, okay, what did he say? He said, life sucks for everyone and everything. If you're alive, you're in pain. What was it? Observation, orientation. The root of the suckiness is the perception and the attachment. There is a route out. The third noble truth, there is a way out. What was the way out? The fourth noble truth was, there is the way out is through the eightfold path. What's that? Right thought, right word, right deed, right meditation, right intention. That's it. In other words, things suck. We can make them suck less when we behave in a disciplined, consistent way in accordance with certain laws. Don't get waylaid. Don't get dragged in. Don't go with the flow. Only dead fish go with the flow. Don't do it. You have to be willing to say stop, because all the prophets told us in some words, stop. What does, there's a metaphor for a prophet that is, he is the seal. Who invented seals? Who was about seals? Hermetic. What's a hermetic seal? When something is hermetically sealed, it is completely watertight. Hermes, who may or may not have been the Egyptian god or priest or wise man or prophet, Thoth. That's what hermetically sealed comes from, Hermes. Why? Because Hermes was the god of boundaries. He was the god of transgressing boundaries, and he was the god of maintaining boundaries. So what was his invention and his gift to the world? A seal. What is a seal? S-E-A-L, not the animal, the thing you put on the top of a vessel to keep it watertight. Also called, not so much in England, but in America, a stopper. A stopper. Seal it. Stop it. My final woo point, and this is just me. I've not heard anybody else say this. I look around at the masses of people. My final point. Thank you all for being so patient with me. And I see people who've been cut open spiritually, metaphysically. The trauma was always to keep us locked into the material world. Always. The pain was always there to keep us locked into the material world. That's why all the hideous methods of execution, the mutilation, the torture, especially of spiritual men and women in particular, all the witch burnings, all of that. That's just, how do we hurt people who've connected with something beyond the material world to bring them back in? All of the Bogomils, all of the pagan religions, everything. It was, how do we bring you back? Because you've attained. You don't leave the earth. You don't go heavenwards. You stay here. How do you get someone to come here? Hit them. Ow. Where's my focus? Well, now it's localized where the pain is. Where? Where the pain went. You cut me. I'm back in my body. You torture me. You starve me. I'm back in my body. It works. It's an efficient system until you find some, like, one of these fakirs who are like, oh, you're going to starve me? That's what I do to myself all the time. And what effect does it have on me? You're going to torture me? You're going to mutilate me? Yeah, I do that all the time. It actually helps me to attain to the higher states of consciousness. You got this thing back to front. That was the point, was the pain. So I see people walking around and they're cut and they're open. And the point of the cuts and the trauma is to keep you stuck in the earth, is to keep you stuck in the material world, is to keep you stuck with the stuff, localized stuff, your socks, your shoes, the front door, the cat, the mat, the bills, the job, like there's nothing beyond that. Like we aren't surrounded by stars flying through the galaxy, because the whole solar system is a spaceship that's flying through infinity. And there's nothing out there but space. He's really lost his mind now. And at any point, you and I are surrounded up, down, left, right by stars. And we're made of the same stuff that stars are. Wowee, that's nice. That's fun. That's a thing to hold in consciousness. What does that do when you hold that in consciousness frequently? That's a question for another video. We'll cover that another day. But I see people wounded. I see people walking around with their guts hanging out. I see people with their hearts exposed because they've been cut, they've been hurt, they've been traumatized. And the job, aside from alchemy, is sealing, not the sealing, the SEAL, to hermetically seal people back up again. What did I say in the last video? Take your toys back and take them home. Take your guts back and take them home. Take your heart back and take it home. Take what is yours back onto you, sew it back up and seal it, and say, mine. So the other reason to cut people open is not just to keep them locked into the material world, which is metaphysical and metaphorical. Keep them watching the Kardashians and Love Island and scrolling Instagram and lusting after this and that and the other flipping thing. It's also to access their resources. It's a highly narcissistic thing to do. It keeps you controlled. It keeps you locked into this spectrum of reality, and it's to access your resources. When I cut you open and your guts are exposed, I can eat whenever I want. I can eat whenever I want. It's like I don't know which god did it. I can't remember, but it's like a Greek punishment where some naughty person flew too high. So he was strapped down, and then a raven or some other hungry animal would come and eat his liver every day. And then his liver would grow back. That's humanity. That's humanity. Predators come and eat your liver every day and your liver grows back. Time to heal. Time to heal. Time to seal. Time to get whole again. Time to do the alchemy. Let's do this. Let's do this. I'll take a couple of questions and then I will end this session. If you have a question, please ask it now. Make it one sentence long and end it with the magical symbol that we call a question mark. In Greek, it's Prometheus. Thank you. Prometheus brought fire, right? Wowie. When you've been hurt that much, how do you heal from it internally? Well, I'm glad that you asked that. The way that you do it is you go to my website, spartanlifecoach.com, sign up onto my email list, the email list that I never send emails to. I get regular emails. I must be the only person in the world who gets emails from people, and they're like, why are you not sending me any emails? Is it just me? Is it personal? I'm like, I've stopped sending emails to people. I will send more emails out because it's not good. And the other thing is to do the emotional literacy work. So stop the emotional flashbacks. It's very, very important. There's a whole course there. It takes a couple of hours to get through. If you work at it and you give yourself the time, the space, the self-care, and apply it with discipline for 30 days, do it 5 times a day for 30 days, your emotional flashbacks will come down. You'll start to heal automatically. Anything that needs mopping up, you can do via doing the emotional literacy exercise. If you go to Instagram, my Instagram, I don't own Instagram. You should just go to Instagram. If you go to the Instagram profile, which is at Richard Grannon, there's a whole, I'll show you, there's a whole exercise there that I've written out for you on how to develop your emotional literacy. Beep, 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 beep. And so if you go to Richard, can you see that? Can you go to Richard Grannon? And then what you do when you're doing the emotional literacy exercise, I recommend everybody do this, is you choose, well, you go to start here and it tells you how to do everything. Then you choose a primary emotion and then you just follow the instructions. Just click the link. There's audio, there's video, there's written instructions on the screen, and it tells you exactly what to do. If you stop your emotional flashbacks, develop your emotional literacy, this is the beginning of you being in a position where you can do alchemy. You can't do alchemy and you're not going to seal yourself hermetically again if you're flashbacking. This is the wonderful thing about the evil tool of trauma is, you know, as an evil Nazi narcissistic predator, if I inflict enough trauma on you, it lives with you. Up to a certain point, I can stop making an effort. It's like the gift that keeps on giving. If I give you enough trauma in the right way at the right time, it just keeps going. I don't have to burn calories coming over and stabbing you again and again. The system, through various mechanisms that we'll explain, I've explained elsewhere, but basically we're not evolved to deal with trauma effectively, which is why PTSD and CPTSD exists. Please, everybody, as a side note on CPTSD, please do read articles on PTSD. Please don't think, like, I think I've added to this, don't make too much of a distinction. There's no such thing as CPTSD without PTSD. There's no such thing as PTSD without CPTSD. I'd really like people who identify as CPTSD sufferers to be talking to PTSD sufferers. There's a lot that we can share, and it's always there together. So that's how you can start to heal, so you can do the work. I'm looking for a question. Measure Twice says the reptilian brain will keep you traumatized. So the reptilian brain is really trying to help. Mr. Lizard is like sending out alarms and going, watch out, you. Mr. Lizard is only a mapper, and he's our brains. This is my dumb theory. I have a video on this. Is that your brain is actually predominantly evolved to map terrains, and because it's evolved, it's this unprecedented growth, volume growth of any mammal over a period of time. Our brains grew really, really quickly because the Anunnaki kept hitting us with injections, going, make the brains grow bigger. They're not big enough yet. But I think we evolved to map terrain predominantly. And being good terrain mappers, we have a tendency to turn everything into terrain. So if you want to map your relationship, you're going to map it as though it was terrain. The problem with mapping everything as though it were land, as though it was the terrain, is there's no time. There's no time in a map that is just terrain. And there's no... there's like an inability to sort of have a nuanced topography of emotions. So we tend to be time blind and emotion deaf as a human, especially when we're in survival mode. Especially when we're in survival mode, like time just ceases to exist, and emotions, they're the first things to toss out of the hot air balloon when it's struggling. It's like you don't need them. What you need, if a knife is to your throat, metaphorically speaking, in terms of the evolutionary response to the reptilian brain, is the 4 Fs. What you need, so Mr. Lizard goes, everybody shut up, no time, no emotions, shut up. He's like Mr. Wolf in Reservoir Dogs. I'm gonna come. You need to throw that body over there. You need to get some cleaning equipment. You need to move those brains. You need to put the blanket down. Okay, I'm out of here. He's Mr. Wolf, but he's Mr. Lizard. And he says, okay, we're in an emergency now. Everybody shut up, because he has no authority on the deck of the Starship Enterprise that is your brain until there's an emergency. He's nobody. He's like some weird, crazy guy, some old guy who sits in his cell in his room. And then when there's an emergency, he's number one, and he just takes over. And it's like, shut down the reactor beams, shut down the turbines on level 2. Everything focuses on either shields or lasers, or running away really quickly through hyperspace. This is not a bad analogy. I like where I went with this. I was frightened for a minute that I was going to go wrong. Or negotiating with the enemy through the TV screen on Star Trek. And you'd be like, well, you've actually diminished the oxygen levels. Oxygen, some oxygen. It's not going to do you any good if everybody dies. You see the metaphor? Things that you would need to thrive and live your life. Mr. Lizard's like, no. It's like our rations are down to 200 calories a day. We're going to die. And I'd be like, well, you're not going to die today. You might die in a month, but this is the way it is. It's an emergency takeover. A reptilian reaction is an emergency takeover. That's PTSD. That's CPTSD. It's not supposed to be a lifestyle. It's not supposed to last for years. It's supposed to be like, listen, Mr. Lizard is on deck. Everybody shut up. And it is literally shut the hell up, including Spock, including Kirk. This analogy works great. So your brain, your prefrontal lobes, your logic, your reasoning. No. Shut up. Your heart, your sense of right and wrong, your sense of intuition, your Captain Kirk. Shut up. Mr. Lizard's in charge. All life systems focus on fight, shoot the enemy, run like hell away, up shields, or negotiate. I don't want to hear anything else. And he gets to stay in charge until the threat goes away. But the problem is, with the Starship Enterprise, the sensors are broken. and it thinks the threat's still there 25 years later. All those those Klingons who were attacking it, they're dead or moved on, or they just like became hippies or something. They went like quarter of a century ago, but we can still see them on the sensors. And whilst we can still see them, we're hallucinating them, we're imagining them. Mr. Lizard is still in control. I was happy with that metaphor. I managed to bring pretty difficult to understand neurobiological concepts like the HPA axis and its response to threats and the pituitary gland and adrenaline, and wrap it up in a way that made sense using a Star Trek analogy. A round of flipping applause for me and a big old pat on the back. And I think I'm going to end on a high note there. Ladies and gentlemen, as ever, thank you so much for your time, your patience, and your attention. Please do be careful what you spend your time and your precious, precious golden attention on. And I look forward to speaking to you again soon. Cheers.